Okay, I am live now. Hi, everyone. It's Marc Sabatella from the Mastering MuseScore School. This is my MuseScore Café, my weekly series of chats where I talk about some aspects of making music with MuseScore. So I always like to pick some topic to talk about, and I am also always welcoming questions on any subject. Um, and I want to talk a little bit about some of my plans going forward a little bit. As most of you maybe have seen already, I am now starting a new series. Let me get my headphones on. Okay. I'm starting a new series on Thursdays. So it'll be the same time, but on Thursdays, it's going to be just talking about music, or at least primarily talking about music. So, in other words, all the sorts of things that we did over the last month, looking at the fall challenge where we looked at all this music submitted by other people, and I just gave my comments on it and gave people ideas of things to work on. I just want to do a series of that, and so that's the music. I'm calling it the Music Masterclass. So if you didn't already see notification about that, let me actually stick notification in chat. I got to get to my proper window for the chat. Let's see. How about this one over here? So I want to post link to appropriate information is the deal. Yeah. Let's. I have no intention of talking about things other than music and MuseScore. So that's the purpose of why we're here today. So what am I looking for? I am looking for to get to the master class. The way I've set this up is, yes, it's going to be just like this cafe where it's just a YouTube live stream. Anyone could just sort of check in at any point. However, there is this specific place on my site where I'm encouraging people to actually enroll. And this gives you a place where you can upload your music for consideration, for discussion, and also a way for me to then be able to comment in ways other than just commenting on the videos, and also gives me a way to then send out messages to let people know about what's coming up and things like that. So anyhow, that is my plan. So yeah, because I really enjoyed, and I think I got feedback from so many of you how much fun that fall challenge thing was, and I just want to keep doing things like that. But I would like the MuseScore Cafe to continue as well. So the MuseScore Cafe will continue, but maybe we'll just focus a little more on MuseScore, a little less on the musical things, because I've got the other thing for that. So the Music Masterclass for that. So that said, I might also have the cafe be a little more question and answer focused. Maybe fewer big, huge topics. But yeah, well, we'll see what happens. So the topic that I picked today, I picked actually, excuse me, just based on looking over the forums. I'm always commenting on forums and responding to questions and stuff there. And I try to keep my pulse on where there seem to be a lot of questions. And for some reason, different aspects of selection have been coming up in the discussions recently. And I'm talking about the forums on musescore.org, but I'm also talking about things like the Facebook group, the support and discussion group there, and uh, the developers chat even. So there's a chat on Telegram just amongst us developers. So there's been a lot of talk about selection, and I figured I would talk about this because it's interesting, because there are so many ways of selecting things in MuseScore, and most people probably uh, are familiar with some of them, but what I find is there's usually some things that people, even who have been using it for a long time, aren't aware of, in part because we keep adding things, and we just added some big stuff selection. Well, sort of big for 3.5. And so I just want to talk about different ways of selecting things and see where that leads us. And it'll always lead us all sorts of places. And I will continue. I'm looking at my phone for to keep track of the chat there, and I will keep flipping over to the chat window here. So yeah, I think separating them. And of course, music will come up here, and MuseScore will come up in the masterclass, and that's fine. It's fine if there's a little crossover. Okay, so the most important thing to know before we go any further talking about selecting things in MuseScore is there is a distinction in MuseScore between what's called a list selection and what is called a range selection. So if you just click something, I clicked a note, that note is selected. You see the thing, a description of what is selected down here. The thing that is selected is now blue. That is what is called a list selection. It's a list of only one thing, right? There's only one note selected. But if I now control click something else, control click something else, control click something else, control click something else, this is now a list, and it even tells you here, a list selection. This is a very specific things. It's this note, there was one other note, that note, this tempo marking, and that time signature. Oh, and this ashtray. Sorry, that's a reference to The Jerk, Steve Martin movie. So this slur here is now part of my list selection. So you can select things in a list like this. And when you do that, you will see in the inspector here is a list of things you can do. Because those elements are all of different types, it's a pretty small set of things you can do. You can make them visible or invisible, and the keyboard shortcut V will happily make them all invisible, right? And V makes them visible again. By the way, the reason they went away completely, you're probably used to seeing them show up in gray, but under the View menu, apparently on this score, I had previously turned off the display of invisible items. If I turn it back on, now when I press V, you'll see it grayed out in the score. It still won't print or anything. So this idea that you can select random things by control clicking them to build a list selection is often is very often what you might want to do. Usually it's not that random. It might be, hey, I want to select these 4 slurs, for instance, and then maybe delete them all. And you want to leave all the rest of your slurs, but delete those. So the building list selections by, excuse me, control clicking things individually is definitely a powerful thing. There's a lot of other ways of creating list selections other than control clicking them individually. But control clicking things individually is, it's pretty universal. I mean, I think pretty much every program, every computer program I know has some form of that in it, whether it's, well, I shouldn't say every program I know. It's just a standard thing that control clicking things individually builds yourself a list selection. So I want to contrast that with a range selection. If I click one element and shift click another, I get a range, and now I have this blue box, and you'll see the status bar says range selection. A range selection means everything in this range, from that first rest there to that last note that I clicked there. Everything in that range is selected. That includes things like the text elements that aren't actually in the box. The box doesn't encompass all that, because some of these things might be actually it might be impossible to make that happen. Like, right, this thing could be over there. And now it's part of the range selection, but there would be no way to draw a box around it without also including things that are not part of the range selection. So a range selection, though, is basically all elements from this point in time to that point. A range selection is defined by a start and an end point in time, and also a particular staff. Like, you'll see it's only the top staff. The way I created that by clicking this and shift clicking that, this again is common to pretty much every computer program, right? You can go into your favorite word processor. Do I have one open? No, but I could just open up a I guess I'll open up a Google Doc, and just because talking about things in terms of text is often useful. And I'm going to want to make a couple other analogies here. So if I have some text, you can't build list selections in text. Usually most word processors don't have that, but clicking something and then shift clicking something else to select everything in between that's common to pretty much any text editor. So this gives you a range selection, and now if I press delete, everything in that range goes away. Now actually, we did tell a slight lie here. We're highlighting the tempo marking as if it's part of the range, but actually tempo markings belong not just to this staff, but they belong to the whole score. And so they don't go away as part of a range. So that's something to know. If I press V to make it invisible, it will, but they won't be deleted because it's still relevant to other staves. That's a little aside to know about range selections. So that method of selecting click and shift click is another way of that is the sort of standard way of creating a range selection. And so these are the things that are maybe the most similar to how they work in other programs. And what I want to do today is show you a lot of other ways of creating both of these types of selections, because there's quite a few of them. Some of them, as I mentioned, are brand new. And then anything that comes up along the way, questions, I'll be happy to answer. Whether they're related or not, I don't really care. So what I want to do is just stick with range selections, because range selections are really perhaps the more powerful type of selection, because that's the kind that we can then go Control C to cut. Oh, I need to turn on, give me a moment, turn on my screen display. All right, Control C. Hello, Control C. To copy, and then I can come down here and Control V to paste, right? So copy and paste operations like that are usually connected to the idea of a range selection. There are certain operations that really only make sense to do. Like if I remember that original selection I had where it was like a few random notes and a slur over here and a tempo marking there and a time signature there, what would it even make sense to try to copy and paste that selection somewhere else? It makes no sense, really. So we basically don't have a way to do copy and paste of arbitrary list selections like that. So that, that said, there are certain things you can copy and paste with just lists, like an individual note. I can take this D flat here, copy it, and then paste it over here. Let me paste it over here instead. And notice what happened. It was a 16th note, but when I pasted it, it became a quarter note. So you're not really pasting the entire thing. You are really pasting the thing you selected is really just the pitch, D flat, because there's more to a note than just its pitch, but that's all that's actually selected is a pitch, D flat. And so that got pasted over here and became a D flat, but now as a quarter note. If I really wanted a 16th note, I would need to create a range selection. So I can click that D flat and then shift click it. That didn't work, right? So instead, I'm going to hit escape to have nothing selected, and I'm just going to shift click this D flat. That, with nothing selected, shift click will basically create a new range selection for you, starting from nothing, but then encompassing that note. Now I can copy that and paste it over here, and I will actually get a 16th note out of that D flat. So that is a little bit about copying and pasting of individual notes. Yeah, I mean, we definitely try to make things. Okay, so only selecting voice one. I'm going to come to that in a second, but I'm a little confused by the question about, or not the question, the comment about control click working in Word. So in Word, can you actually select like, I don't even know what you can select, because clicking doesn't even select anything in Google Docs. It just moves the cursor. However, if I bring up some sort of dialog box or some sort of palette or something, like actually if I don't even know. Yeah, I don't want to go too far into that, but I don't know what you can even click to select in here. But if there is something you can click to select, Control click probably will build a list selection. All right, so let's come back to range selections though. So one of the questions was about selecting just one voice. So by the way, notice also all I did was I clicked an empty spot in the measure. Clicking an empty spot in a measure is a way of creating a range selection. Before I did it by clicking one note, shift clicking another, and that created a range selection. But just clicking an empty spot will select that measure. Also, let's return to Word for a second here, or Google Docs anyhow. If I hold shift and press the right cursor key, it's going to extend my selection, right? One letter at a time. And if I use control right cursor, it goes a word at a time. Well, it's the same in MuseScore. If I click a note and go shift and right arrow, it extends the selection one note at a time. If I go control right arrow, it extends the selection one measure at a time. So that much, again, is modeled on how it works on word processors. So that's actually the way I do really a lot of my selections. Click something and then shift right arrow or control and shift right arrow to go a measure at a time. I do a lot of selections that way. So if I want only voice one selected here, like maybe I want to delete, let's say I want to delete the notes in voice two. Then what I can do is go to View, Selection Filter, and there's a shortcut for it, F6. The selection filter, it's called a filter because it basically removes things from a range selection. So the selection filter here is only relevant for range selections. It's not a way to build a list selection. It's a way of removing things from a range selection. So notice that you can see everything is highlighted in here. The voice one notes are blue. The voice two notes are green. I think you can tell the slur is blue also, but if you can't, trust me, it is. If I uncheck voice two, you will now see that voice two is no longer selected. Those notes are black, indicating that they're not selected. In this case, though, I wanted to delete voice two. So what I'm going to do is uncheck voice one. Now voice one is excluded from the selection. It's filtered out. Only voice two, well, and three and four are selected. There's nothing in voice three or four. So now if I press delete, you can see that voice two went away, but voice one remained. So that is a way of selecting an individual voice or filtering out anyhow one voice. If I have like this measure here actually has three voices. So if I want to really select, if I wanted to delete, like right now, I still have voice one unselected here. So voice one is excluded. Voice two, three, and four are all selected. So if I press delete now, those other voices all go away. Whereas maybe I want to only delete voice two. So then I can uncheck voices three and four. Now only voice two is selected. Voice two are the green notes there. When I delete those, you can see that this note here, which was in voice four, remains. So always remember though, to after you're done with that, recheck everything or just check all here. Because otherwise, if you have voice one not selected, you will find you can't, like I'm trying to click this measure here and I can't select it because there's nothing in it that's not in voice one. Everything in this measure is in voice one. So with voice one filtered out, there's nothing to select here. So I can't even make the selection. So you'll discover that and you go, why can't I select anything? And it's because you need to reselect voice one in the filter. So so that's something to keep in mind when using the filter. Bob, yes, this is live. Um, all right. So let's talk about text a little bit. Uh, we have some ability. Let me go to just a blank score here and we just type in some random text. We don't have the ability to build list selections within text. So like if you want to just, what was the question? Want to italicize several words, control highlight each one. Oh, okay, so you're talking about how it works in Word. So yeah, I don't think that's going to work here. I can double click. Oh yeah, so here's more about selection. While I'm editing text, if I just click somewhere, just like a word processor, it just moves the cursor. But let me move back over here to Google Docs. If I double click a word, it selects it. If I double click this one, it selects that. But how about if I control double click? Nope. Uh, it looks like Google Docs doesn't have that selection, and I don't think we do either. I don't think there's any way. I'm trying to like do various control click sorts of things. I don't think there's any way to select discontiguous words like that. But you can certainly use the standard other things that would work in Google Docs for that matter. Shift right arrow to go a letter at a time, or with control to go a word at a time, or double click to select a word. I think triple click selects a whole line. Is it the whole line or is it the whole text? Let's find out. It's the whole thing. So triple click selects everything. Double click selects just a word. So that's something there also. So the filter, though, is useful for a lot of things other than voices. So I'm going to come back to my piece here and look at what if I want to delete, or not even delete, maybe I just want to say delete the notes but leave the dynamics behind. So I can select my range here, and I'll select, say, to here. In fact, let me just select all. Control A, select all. There you go. We haven't looked at that one yet, but that's a common shortcut. Control A to select all. Now I can exclude dynamics from my selection, and the dynamics are now not selected. And now if I press delete, then you'll see the dynamics stayed behind. There's my MF, there's my MP. So again, the filter can be used to exclude things from the selection. And it's very often used as a prelude to deleting things, but it might be a prelude to something else. What you actually do with that selection is perhaps another matter, and that's why when people come in with questions about how to do things, we might see, oh, well, here's a use case for doing this particular thing. Yeah. So Roman numerals. So here's the thing. I'm going to show you this in terms of selection, and then I'm going to show you how to do it without bothering. So I'm going to enter some notes. I just entered some notes, and I'm going to enter Roman numerals. I use Roman numerals a lot, so I've defined a shortcut for it. Control-Alt-R is the shortcut that I've defined. And I'll just type in some Roman numerals. All right, there's my Roman numerals. And as you see, they're all at different heights. So if I wanted to make them the same height, I have a few different options here. And I'm going to show you the way that's related to selection first. Then I'll show you actually the simpler way. What if I wanted to make all those the same height, but then on the next staff, maybe I have one, and these are already a good height, right? I don't need to move these anywhere. But some of these other ones, I need to like move them so they're as low as the 5. So what I really want to do is select all these and make them the same distance below. So there used to be, well, there still is one way. So we're going to do this with a list selection. We want to select just the Roman numerals in this group. So there's a chance, but I think a very low chance, that I can do it by drag selecting. If I shift and drag my mouse, I can build a selection. If the selection includes notes like it did there, it will create a range selection. If I am managed to create in this box something where there's no notes, it will just build a list selection, so just the 1 and the 2. So then the question is, can I successfully drag a box here that's going to only give me the Roman numerals and not the notes? I might barely be able to. I think I've pulled it off. Oh, looks like those didn't get included. And I'm a little afraid that if I go far enough up to include those numbers, I'm going to end up getting the notes too. But maybe I've just barely pulled it off. Yeah, I think I just barely pulled it off. So I got kind of lucky that I was able to do that, drag something that just included the Roman numerals. If this A had been any lower, then I wouldn't have been able to. There would have been no way to select those Roman numerals without getting that G in there, and then suddenly I'm going to range selection of that G. So, hey, Colleen. This method of trying to shift plus drag select, yeah, it occasionally does a useful thing, but we generally speaking need other ways of doing it. So up until last month, here's what I would have told you to do. I would have told you first select the range. Like say I want to select these Roman numerals right here. I would have said, let's select that range. I click that measure, shift click this one. Then what I can do is right click a Roman numeral, and then you'll see select here. So right now we have a range selection, but this select menu is going to convert that into a list selection. So I right-clicked a Roman numeral, at least I think I did. I actually forget what yeah, it even says Roman numeral up there. So select all similar elements. If I do all similar elements, it's going to select literally all the Roman numerals. Well, I didn't want that. I wanted just the ones in that range. So let me go back, get my range back, and this time when I right-click, I'm going to say select all similar elements in range selection. So when I do that, now just those Roman numerals are selected. And then I can go to the inspector here and set a height for them that allows them to align. So up until a month ago, that's how I would have told you needed to do things. But we now have a couple better options. So let me undo those changes and get these Roman numerals all unaligned again. Okay. So I mentioned that click a note, shift click another note as a way of creating a range selection. Well, that's all well and good for creating range selections with notes. But I can't tell you how many times over the years people have suggested, well, I want to build a select other things the same way. I want to build a click this Roman numeral and shift click this one. And as of 3.5, this now works. I clicked the one, shift clicked this one, and it selected just the Roman numerals. So if you click an item and then you shift click another item of the same type, you will create a list selection of those things. So it won't, like, if I had maybe had a staff text up here and I clicked this and then shift clicked that, it wouldn't know what to do. It can't create, it's not going to try to, it doesn't know whether, are you trying to select all the Roman numerals, all the staff text, both, neither, what? So we don't deal with that. We just deal with clicking one thing, shift clicking another thing of the same type. So as of 3.5, that now works as a way of selecting all of those things. And then again, you can go and set them all to have the same offset. So that is one way of aligning just these without worrying about those. However, I mentioned that we've made it even easier. So now to finally answer the question for real. Yes, I'm glad I'm creating some jaw drops. That is my thing. Selection is something that we all do a lot, but chances are, even if you've been around a long time, there's going to be something you didn't know, in part because some of this is brand new. And if you haven't been using it a lot, chances are some of the things like that whole right-click menu, probably a lot of people have never seen, especially if you're on a Mac and you're not used to thinking in terms of right-clicking. But that idea of right-clicking something and then being able to select all similar elements is pretty powerful. But now, to align Roman numerals, now I said there's a way of doing it. Doesn't involve selection, doesn't involve the inspector at all. It involves just going to Format, Style, chord symbols, because Roman numerals are considered a type of chord symbol. And there are two new settings, also new in 3.5, maximum shift above, maximum shift below. What this means is these are settings that will allow MuseScore to try to align them. And it's not just an all or nothing thing, for reasons that I'll show you in a second. It tells you how hard should MuseScore to try, right? How hard should MuseScore try to align these things? Right now it's trying 0. It's trying not at all to align these things. If I increase this value from 0 to, say, 1, it's going to see, can I get everything to align by only moving them one staff space? That's what SP stands for, space. Well, the answer is no. These chord symbols, these Roman numerals would have to move by more than one staff space to align with that V, to align with that 5 there. 1.5, still not enough. 2, still not enough. Oh, for 2.5, look, it was enough in the case of the 4. That guy got to align because it only had to move less, because I guess by default it was already pushed down ever so slightly because of that B. You can't even tell it, I guess, but it must have been. So when I told it, go ahead and allow it to shift by at least this much, then it will say, thank you, that's enough. I can now line it up. But it wasn't enough for everything else. And so now we can go to 3. And now it's not saying move everything by 3. It's saying go ahead and align them if you can do it within 3 staff spaces. So in other words, it allows you to create this alignment if that's what makes sense. But if you had had this one note be a complete outlier, if this note had been way down here, I don't think you really want all of these guys to move, right? You'd probably just let it be an outlier. So by using that setting, I can set it to 3. Sorry, timer on my light. You'll see that by setting it to 3, it's not going to try to align these, because that's not enough. It's not enough to get the V and to get that 5 in there. And really, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with this 1 being an outlier. But then if this B moves down just a little bit, it will move the other ones, right? So it's going ahead and aligning these other ones because it can. So this gives you quite a bit of flexibility. You could just set a huge high number in that maximum shift, and then it will just align everything, even if one of them's crazy out. Or you can set a sort of medium value. I use 3 normally, and that way, yeah, if it can align them by only moving things a little bit, it will. But as soon as there's one way outlier, it'll say no. I'm gonna not include that. So the only reason the 0 effort is the default is we didn't want to change the behavior for existing scores. So yeah, I would say, I don't like that as the default. And in fact, did I change it? We might have changed it in the Jazz template, the Jazz lead sheet template. We talked about it. Did we? Is another matter. In the Jazz template, in the Jazz template, I did set 3 as the default there. But yeah, we didn't want to do it we didn't want to affect existing scores, because people might have done things relying on the current alignment. They might have done some manual adjustments based on where things are currently. So we just didn't want to do that. We try to be careful about that, but on the other hand, it's hard to make improvements and then existing scores that might have depended on old bugs even. We can fix a bug and someone's score gets broken because they were relying on the bug. And that's just a fact of life. Like the whole fact that chord symbols play now. Chord symbols by default will play, right? And that's great that they play, but if you created a score in the past and you added chord symbols and you're used to not hearing them play, and maybe you added your own notes, your own voicings for them, you probably don't want them to suddenly start playing. So we did actually make it so that older scores aren't affected, but it's complicated to do that. We had to add special preferences to control that behavior, and we don't want to do that for every little feature we add to like make a special exception for old scores. So sometimes we just choose the conservative, the safe default. When MuseScore 4 comes along, we'll have a chance to revisit that. Also, when MuseScore 3. Oh my gosh, MuseScore 3.6. So MuseScore 3.6, I'm going to go to the Telegram chat and hey everyone, I'm uh, reminder to self. We have a forum. We have a chat here. Let's think about making in 3.6, because yeah, 3.6 is going to come along, and we are making a conscious choice to make some improvements that we know will affect old scores. And so we're going to have this whole migration path where on an import, it's going to say, hey, do you want to take advantage of these new defaults or not? You don't have to. But if you do, we've got some new defaults that we think are going to make things better. And so we've got a whole like set of improvements that are coming for 3.6. And that'll be coming probably this month. A number of improvements, not huge ones, not huge changes like from MuseScore 2 to MuseScore 3, but things like this, basically, things that probably should have been done automatically but weren't, are coming. And so I look forward to being able to show you some stuff about that. So so yeah, there you go. But this is the type of thing that maybe probably we could think about making a part of the new defaults. I think it's also going to apply to some things like, how thick are slurs by default. I think we're going to make them a little thicker by default. But again, for existing scores, you'll have the option of applying that. Also, there's a new font. So some of you know the Martin, who goes by Tantacruel on YouTube, and he did this whole series of videos kind of critiquing different notation programs, and then we ended up hiring him to be our head of design. Well, he is designing a font, a new music font. So there will be a new music font based on there was a computer program called Score that you can't buy. It's not available. It was something that was like used in the 80s, basically, by professional publishers, and a lot of music published over the last 30 years, 40 years, was created using Score. So a lot of the big publishing houses publishing classical music and so forth were using this program called Score that no one else has access to. It's not sold on the open market. It's not even it's not even developed anymore, but it has a very specific look that any published music of the last 40 years or so often uses. And so that program is like near and dear to the hearts of a lot of professional engravers, and we also hired one of those within the MuseScore team. So that engraver, Simon and Martin, have kind of co-designed this new font that's designed to look very much like the look of scores that were produced with the program Score. So in 3.6, there'll be this whole new music font available also. And again, we will probably make it the default for new scores, but not for existing ones. So it was settings, chord symbols. So yeah, it's format, style, chord symbols is where that thing is. And notice there's a shift above, shift below. So I only set the below one. So this is going to align my Roman numerals, but not my chord symbols. If I want to align my chord symbols also, then I would put 3 there. So there was some more about selection. I got a couple other things to show you about selection. Let me go back to that right-click menu, because when I right-clicked this, we saw select all similar. We also saw all similar in range selection, where you can see there's another one, all similar in same staff. Staff is different than system, right? This piece of music here is only one staff. It has 8 systems, I think 8 probably, yeah, 4 measures of 8 systems of 4 measures each. So each line of music is called a system, but this is only one staff. If I go to a piece of music that actually has multiple staves, now you see that we have multiple staves. So what if I wanted to like the playback, actually let me go to here. This is, yeah, when I'm playing this score here, oh, you can't hear that, right? Yeah, you can hear that. You can hear the, I think, yeah, you should be able to hear that. If I've got this set up right, you can hear the playback. So I'm not sure what the question is there about name, but someone can fill me in. So these chord symbols aren't playing because it's an older score, but I can turn it on by pressing play here. Well, what if I want to just turn on the playback? Because you can hear I've added playback to the guitar already. Right? You can hear the guitar, I think, and the bass because I added notes. There's invisible notes here or invisible staff for that. But you're not hearing the piano play back the chords. So maybe I just want to play back all the piano chords, and I just want to select all the chords on the piano staff. So I can right-click that chord, say select all similar elements in same staff. And now just the piano chords are selected, not the bass chords, not the guitar chords. And I can come to the inspector and turn on play. So that would allow me, that's a way I can get that effect of selecting losing track of where I'm at on the page here. There it is. So yeah, that is right-clicking, select all similar and same staff. Since there's no range selection, all similar elements in range selection is grayed out. But there's also more. What is more? More lets you select a little more specifically than that. So let me actually go back to my little example. What if I selected these chords and I did these Roman numerals and I showed you a few different ways of doing that. But what if I knew I wanted everything on that system selected? Well, I could right click that one and then say more, same system. And now just the things on this system are selected. Now you notice the chord symbol is selected also because Roman numerals and chord symbols are considered, they're internally treated very much the same. Well, what if I don't want that? I think, I won't guarantee this is going to work, but I think if I say same subtype here, the subtype is going to be what's going to distinguish Roman numeral from chord symbol. So let's see if that works. Yes, that selected just the Roman numerals, not the chord symbol. And since I also had same system selected, it didn't select these Roman numerals. So that dialog gives you a fair amount of control over this stuff. And for that matter, let me go back to Reunion now. If I select, say, this slur here, right-click that, select more. I guess there aren't any other subtypes for slur, but I can select by voice. I can say just the slurs in this voice, just the ones in the same measure. There's a lot of different options here, including options that I almost never think about using, but check this out. I could say add to selection, and it's selected, right, all the slurs. But now I can add to that selection all the, what else would we want to add? How about if we add all the crescendos? So I'll right click, more, and I'm going to add to selection all the hairpins. That is considered a hairpin. I guess we can't differentiate crescendo from diminuendo. But now, since I did add to selection, now I have the slurs and the crescendos selected together. So that select more is oh yeah, okay, tentacle. Okay, so yeah, I'm looking at the chat, so sorry, I'm getting distracted. So yeah, this method of selecting things with select more definitely gives you a lot of options. Let me just continue that line of thought, and then I'll come back to the chat. Maybe some of you all can answer each other's questions while I continue this thought. But if I right-click a note and say select more, there's actually a lot of options here. So notice I can select by note head, so just the normal note heads, because if I had, say, a percussion score here, and there were some notes with a cross, and some notes with a slash, and some notes with an X, and some notes, well, X is a cross, I guess, but, diamond note heads, all the different note heads that are used in percussion, you can limit just by that note head. Or if you're using different note heads for other reasons, like you're using the solfege note heads or something. So I can also select by pitch. Like this selects just the G4s. So let's look at that. So you can see this G4, that G4, that G4 is selected. Other Gs, not so much, right? This G down here, that's G2. Those numbers are octave numbers. 4 is the middle C on up octave. So that selected just the G4s. But if I come back to that more dialogue, you'll see that instead of same pitch, I can just same note name, G. And now it's also going to give me all the other Gs, the G2 here, the G3 there. So within the note dialogue, there's actually quite a lot of options there. By duration, I can select all the quarter notes. Same note type versus duration. Okay, so here's the deal. That's all quarter notes. Let me select all quarter notes, and then we're going to get to see what's different. These are all quarter notes. These are not quarter notes exactly, right? They are quarter notes triplets. The duration is actually different than a quarter note, so they didn't get selected. If, on the other hand, I had selected a note and come in here and said select, oops, I guess I got to be a little higher up on the screen, sorry. So again, I select some other random note that's not a triplet and say select more, and I say same note type instead of same duration. Now you'll see the quarter notes within the triplet are selected, because even though they're not technically quarter notes, it's the same type of note. So that's a distinction that's sometimes useful. All right, so yeah, that select more dialogue is incredibly powerful. It's got a lot of options for doing different kinds of selections. So let me come over to the chat and answer some of the questions. Tanta Krull. So that's the guy. Look him up on YouTube. He's got some amazing videos. They are entertaining, let's put it that way. They are very well produced, and he does not pull punches. When he doesn't like something, he doesn't like it, and is very very explicit about that, and very humorous about making his points. But they're all very good points. And so anyhow, he's got a review of Sibelius that kind of put him on the map as far as notation software was concerned. Then he did the MuseScore one. Then he did a Dorico one. I suppose eventually there may be a finale one, but I don't know. Okay, so I am wondering, so the chord symbol change didn't change anything. So I'm not sure. I guess you're probably talking about that alignment. So probably you would have to, be able to show me the score and everything. And so realistically, this is maybe not something that I can resolve for you in here. But I will say, go to an empty score and do exactly this. Enter a C and a C like that. No, let's just do this C. And enter two chord symbols, C and D. And tell me if they align or not. If they don't align, in my case, you can see that C moved up because I have it set the maximum shift above to 3. But if I reset it to 0, you'll see they're not aligned. In fact, let's go ahead and make that C be a D. And now so we have a C down here, we have a D up there. If you enter a C here and a D there, and then put a C chord symbol here and a D chord symbol there, you should find they are not aligned. But if you go to the chord symbols dialog, and set maximum shift above to 3, not below. Again, below has to do with the alignment below the staff. Set maximum shift above to 3. You should see exactly what we saw here. When I set it to 3, that C jumped up to join the D. If that doesn't happen for you, I will be real surprised. So most likely you're either not setting the correct shift, or you are not setting a large enough shift to get the result you want. One of those two things. But again, that's only chord symbols. It doesn't affect other things like staff text or anything. So that's that. So at this point, I haven't necessarily, I mean, there's a ton of stuff in those, all those right-click dialogues, like for text. Check this one out. Select all similar elements, selected just things that are considered frame text. So it selected both the title and the composer. But if I right-click this and say select more, here you have the opportunity to select by subtitle, by same subtype, and so it'll only select titles. So if you have a score where there's multiple titles, like there's multiple movements, and you've used the title multiple times, that'll select all the titles, but not the composers. So yeah, that subtype thing often will help differentiate things. If I go back to Reunion and let's try right-clicking that accent mark, select more, and the accent, the subtype is accent above. If I select that, I think actually accent above and accent below are the same type. When I select that, it'll just select the accents, but not all these tenuto markings there. And so there's a lot of control for things like that are built in here. So my guess is I haven't showed you everything. I can show you one other thing. Solfege and minor key. Okay, I'll come back to that in a second, and I'm still a little confused about the question about. I guess okay. So let me just address that. So if you're having trouble getting this, if you have this exact situation, and you're checking that it's exactly C on the staff, D above the staff, and you are putting a C chord symbol on that C and a D chord symbol on that D, and then you are going to format, style, chord symbols, and you're setting maximum shift above to 3, and it's not shifting, then we would need to know about that. We would need you to go to the support forum on musescore.org and attach the score where it's not working so we can see. It could be there's some other setting going on, like maybe you've disabled automatic placement. I don't know. Maybe you've explicitly set some offset previously. So it's hard, without seeing your actual score, we won't be able to tell you exactly why it's not working, but in general, it should work. So the question about solfege. So the thing is with solfege, this came up in the forum. I don't know if that was you who asked, but I did just answer it just yesterday. So we do have this feature, and so let me just select some notes here. And here's another thing about selection. I've selected this range, but this range includes things other than notes, right? It includes chord symbols. It includes, so technically the stem isn't actually part of the note. It's a separate thing. So in order to literally get just the notes in that range selection, I can press the notes button down here. Oh, you can't see it. It's my picture is covering it up. But if I move my inspector over here, you can now see the notes way down here in the inspector. So if I press the notes button in the inspector, you can now have only the notes selected. And because now this is a list selection, only the notes. It's not a range anymore because it no longer includes all the other stuff that was in there. It's just these notes. But because at least they're all the same type, the inspector can show everything that applies to that. For MuseScore 4, Tantacruel Martin has designed improvements to the inspector where it tries to be smart. If you've got a mixture of notes and rests, it won't show you nothing because they're mixed. It'll show you things that are relevant to notes or the things that are relevant to rests. So it tries to be smart about that. So anyhow, what are we looking at? I forgot what I'm looking at. I am looking at so okay, let me come back to this. Uh, okay, I'm going to have a guess. I know what's going on Roman numeral wise. So let me come back to that in a second. Um, what I wanted to do though is change the note heads, right? So this is a new feature in MuseScore 3. We added a staff property that you could make all the entire staff have different types of note heads. As of 3.4, 3.5, I forget, you can now do it for just a selection. So I have just these notes selected. Under note scheme, I can set them to solfege. And there's solfege movable do, solfege fixed do. If I set solfege movable do, you probably can't see very well what's going on, so let me zoom in a little bit. But you can see this C is now labeled do. The E is mi. The G is sol. That's because we are in the key of C. That's what movable do is about. If I change the key by, let's add a different key signature, shall we? Let's make it the key of E flat. Now suddenly, this C is La, because in the key of E flat, C is La. That's what movable do is about. Some people in like Spanish-speaking countries, French-speaking countries, you might not be familiar with the idea of movable do. To you, do is just the name for C, right? But in most of the world, actually, we use what's called movable do, where do is the tonic of whatever key you're in. So now here's the thing. So this solfege idea then, uh, in the key of E flat major, C is La. But of course, three flats isn't only E flat major. It could be C minor. Well, in minor keys, there's actually two different solfege systems. So we already have fixed do solfege, where C is always do, and we have movable do, where do is whatever scale degree 1 is. But within the world of movable do, there's two different systems. MuseScore uses the system that says three flats. We're just going to use what's called law-based minor. So in the key of C minor, according to law-based minor, which is the most common one in the United States, C is La. So even in the key of C minor, we would sing La, Ti, Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La. That is how we would sing a C minor scale in law-based minor. La, ti, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. If I'm doing that right. I hope I am, because I'm teaching this stuff next year. So let me think about it. So the idea is, once you get the relationships between these syllables done, you only have to learn it once. So la, ti, do, that much sounds right. Now that I'm on do, I can go do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. And that's it sounds like you're singing a major scale after that. So all the skill you put into singing a major scale totally works. That's law-based minor. What you, Philip, are asking about, I guess, is do-based minor, which personally I prefer, but it is definitely the minority in the United States anyhow. Do-based minor says that in the key of C minor, we will call this do, and we'll go do, re, mi for scale degree flat 3, fa, sol, and then lay is flat 6, te is flat 7, do. So that's do-based minor. We don't currently support that. It was just brought up on the forum for the first time, I think, ever yesterday or 2 days ago. Maybe that was you, maybe it was someone else. If eventually there's enough requests for it, no doubt we would add that as a feature. So, okay, so that is the idea. So that law-based minor versus do-based minor, they're just two different schemes. This displaying of C as law in C minor is absolutely correct if you're using law-based minor. That is what law-based minor means. But for do-based major, this should have been do, and then that would have been re, and then E flat would have been May. So let me come back to the question um, about automatic placement and the question about Roman numerals. So the first question I want to ask you is, are you actually adding Roman numerals? I'm wondering if maybe you're not adding text. So to make sure you're adding actual Roman numerals, add text Roman numeral analysis. If you're not adding Roman numeral analysis, all bets are off. This won't apply. So you have to be adding actual Roman numeral analysis. If you're not adding Roman numeral analysis, then none of that maximum shift stuff is going to apply. If you're adding just staff text and moving it below the staff, ain't going to work. It's got to be Roman numeral analysis or chord symbols. So that's the first thing. Then the other thing is, yes, automatic placement is what allows things like this. So this, let me go back to reunion here. Automatic placement is what allows things like if I move this measure up an octave, I'm going to press Control up. Notice the tempo is moving up also, so we don't get collisions. That is automatic placement at work. But you can disable it. Here in the inspector is a checkbox, and when you disable it, now it allows that collision. So that is other collisions are avoided, but this collision is not. So if you've unchecked automatic placement, that goes away. The shortcut to do that, by the way, is the equals key. So equals key will also disable automatic placement and give you that collision. So some delay in chat. Okay, yeah, I know. There's always a delay in the chat, so I'm always talking about other things. So yeah, so I would say if you are still having trouble, I don't. I've still do everything I can think of, but if you post to the support forum on MuseScore.com on MuseScore.org, it's very rare to not have an answer within the hour. It's very common to have it within 5 minutes. So if you have a question and you can post your score and say, how come this thing I just tried isn't working? Here's my score. Chances are within 5 minutes after posting it, someone will have looked at it and will answer and say, hey, I can see it's because you clicked this thing or did this thing or whatever. I can guess all I want here, but when you actually attach your score to a post on the support forum, we'll have the answer for you, like no questions asked. Well, we might have to ask some other questions, but it's practically a done deal. We will have an answer for you almost instantly. So so probably it had something to do with how you placed that thing, and I just don't know until we see it. But I'm glad that it did snap into place, so that's at least something. Probably, though, you had done some sort of manual adjustment of things, and that throws things off, because if you've manually adjusted things, then we don't try to align them anymore. We'll say, oh, you must have moved it for a reason, so we'll keep it there. So I don't know. I've talked about virtually everything that I could imagine talking about with selection, although I'm sure there's other things, and as is always the case, then it led to other discussions, and I'm glad it did. So I feel like we got to answer a lot of good questions, and I'm going to, I think, start winding down. So winding down again means reminding you that the MuseScore Café is going to continue being an every Wednesday thing. And I thought by picking selection, this was going to be a short, simple topic, and it might go a little less than an hour, but I was wrong, right? So because I just love talking and explaining things, and I love it when people can ask questions, because then I can know that I'm helping people. So I just love doing this sort of thing. So the MuseScore Café Wednesdays this time is going to continue to be how we go about talking about MuseScore, but now this music masterclass is how we will in music masterclass is how I'll do basically the same thing but talk about music. And here, yeah, I might do some just me talking about my own music or whatever, or talking about whatever random topic, but I really want to be focused on looking at your music. So that's why I've created that place where we can sort of centralize things there, the music masterclass here. So this guy here that I already pasted into the chat, but I'm going to paste it again. Would love it if you guys, it's just free to enroll. It's just a place where we can sort of centralize some stuff. And if I want to post any thing that's more than just a comment, as long as YouTube allows me to post, it's a place where I can post things, and you can post links to your stuff, and I can find it all. So Yeah, so yeah, if you move them manually, that's the thing right there. So what I would do is select all those Roman numerals using any of the techniques I talked about. Control R will reset them all. Can the notehead name be changed for do bass minor? You can set individual note heads individually, so that would be your only recourse right now. But again, that could be something to bring up in the forum discussion. So I want to thank everyone for being here, and hope to see you all. Hope to see at least some of you tomorrow, because Thursdays are when I'm going to be doing this music masterclass, same time. If you can't make it tomorrow, I look forward to whenever I can start talking to you all about some more music. So I'll catch you all next week, or tomorrow, or whenever, and see you soon. Bye. I'm stalling because I got to find the place where I actually hang up. Bye.